mark and notification.
All right, welcome to the Rules Confirmation and Public Elections Special Called Meeting. It is May 8th. We are running a couple of minutes behind. It is 5:35. We are waiting on one more committee member, but we're gonna go ahead and get started. First up is public comment. No one has signed up for public comment. We do have several guests with us here today from the Arts Commission, and so I think we'll just introduce who's in the room real quick, and then we'll go ahead and go to you, Chair Love. So I guess Reverend Tucker.
Davey Tucker, MHRC Executive Director.
Leah Dupree Love, Acting Chair, Metro Arts Commission.
Tim Jester, Metro Arts Commissioner.
Heather Lefkowitz, Metro Arts Commissioner. Carol McCoy, Metro Arts Commissioner.
Great. Well, thank you all so much for being here and for what's the saying for braving the storm? I don't know. American sayings are hard for me sometimes. I don't think I ever got them right. Hopefully the storm will pass by the time this is over. But I do appreciate you guys making the effort to be here. So I do want to recognize Acting Chair Leah Love, Dr. Leah Love, for the Arts Commission. Today we will probably have some questions, want to hear about what the Commission is doing, priorities, where you think we are missing, categories in our questionnaire, things that we need to consider, trainings, etc. I know it can seem like the Arts Commission is being singled out in recent days, but we will be looking at this holistically for all of the boards and commissions. We've just had several questions throughout this period of time, and since this is one of the more critical boards at the moment, we want to make sure we have an accurate picture as to what's going on and what we need to be on the lookout for. So, floor is yours.
All right. Well, I am happy to hear that we are not being singled out, because when I initially got the ask to come here, I just assumed naively that other boards and commissions were going to be here, because one of the things that was asked was that Metro HR and how they supported and prepared boards and commissions. And so, who we hire and what process and procedures are in place for that, specifically in our case, the executive director. And so I just thought other boards would be here, but I'm happy to hear that other boards will be looked at. But again, I don't feel too singled out, because sometimes one board or commission can highlight issues with the entire system. And so I appreciate you all taking the time to be here today to let us come before you to speak on issues. And if it is okay with the committee, I will direct questions to the other commissioners, if that is okay, because they may have some answers that I may not have or may not see. We all are fairly new to the commission, so we don't have a lot of the institutional knowledge, but we are here and we are happy to answer any questions. And I said I was acting chair when I first got here, because in the past 7 months, 3 other people before me have resigned as chair. And I have only been on the commission for 1 year. And since I've been appointed, I've heard several things, and I wrote some of those down. I've heard that funds are not dispersed equitably. I've heard that Metro staff oversteps and may have hidden agendas. I've heard Metro Legal does not give good advice. I've heard that the executive director is difficult to work with. Staff is incompetent. Metro Arts has a toxic work environment. All these things are coming at us, right? And I'm a firm believer that several things can be true at the same time. All of these things can be true. Some of them can be true. None of them can be true. We just really don't know. And with the, again, the lack of institutional knowledge, I've been on just a year. The people to my right, a couple of months. No, you and me a year. The other two, just a couple of months. And, what do we do with that information? We are not allowed to meet or talk outside of meetings. And when we are in meetings, typically we aren't giving the And that could be just because that's historically how things went, but we really aren't given the time to have those in-depth conversations. So what do we do with all that information? How do we take those pieces, hearing from stakeholders, hearing from staff? What do we do with that information when over half of the commission has resigned? So we're left here to pick up the pieces. And it's not an excuse because we all said, yes, we would do this. We all came before this committee and said we would do this. But how do we do that with what we have? And so I know that I have taken the time to research past meetings. I know I can speak for the people to my right. They've done that as well. They have been so vocal, so supportive, and so in the weeds to help us get out of this hole that we're in right now. And so one thing that I would say, and I wrote some of these things down, what would a perfect arts commissioner look like, right? And so I would hope that when you do look at, and Commissioner Lefowitz highlighted some of these. I'm not sure if you had time to read the email that she sent, and it was written so beautifully because she did highlight some of the things that I do want to say, and I don't want to repeat what she said since you have read it, but tailoring your questions to each commission. Because right now it seems like that the question is, do you live in Davidson County, right? And I know you have so many people to come before you and so many people to confirm, and I understand that. But if we could figure out a way to tailor, specifically with the Arts Commission, some of the things that I think that we need is someone with experience in the arts. Members should have a background in the arts, whether it's through education, professional experience, just a personal love for the arts. Of course, diversity. We need a diverse board that reflects the community that it serves. Connections to the arts community. Have a connection to the local artists, the organizations, and all the other stakeholders that can help our commission build partnerships. Leadership skills is very important. As I said before, everyone resigned, and someone who came in a month ago is a chair of a committee. Nothing is wrong with that, right? But with limited knowledge, they're chairing a committee. He's chairing Grant's committee right now. He's capable because he has leadership skills, but when we do get people in, just making sure that they're ready to lead day one, if they can. So just someone with strong leadership skills who can make those critical decisions. Everyone wants to lead until they have to do things that leaders do, which is make those tough decisions. And so sometimes those decisions aren't sweet, right? And so we need someone with leadership skills, someone with just a general understanding of governance, how laws work, how we work with the council, how the council works with the mayor's office, and what role we all have working with each other with that, balance of power. And then the main thing is just a commitment to the arts. Someone who is committed, has a passion for the arts, and a commitment to just supporting local artists, because that's really what our goal is here. But it seems our goal as of late has been more of an HR function, which it happens, right? This is not something that happens all the time, but when it does happen, we need to be able to have the tools that we need to handle those situations, because from my understanding, we have one employee, and that's our executive director. And so what happens when they are gone or they're not doing what they're supposed to do? What happens? Who is in charge then? How do we lead the staff? How do we guide the staff? How do we support the staff? And so figuring out who we talk to when situations like that arise. Do we come to you? Do we go directly to HR? Do we go to Miss Kathy Buggs? Like, who is the person that we talk to when situations like that happen to help guide us? Because we are Metro employees. And so I'll just stop there and give it back to you, or if someone else wanted to say anything.
Yes, I'll open the floor to other commissioners if they would like to speak.
I'll do that. Okay.
One thing, in terms of the composition and what would be helpful, and I know I've heard your committee talk about this before, and I'm grateful for it because I know it's hard, but it's a lot of work. it's been a lot of time and a lot of work, and I know I'm concerned, as I know you are, that just people who have the privilege of putting that kind of work in, and the time and the flexibility, and there's childcare, and we have, you know, parents on our board. We have, several of us have aging parents in crisis. We've had challenging jobs and things like that. And so that's always gonna be a part of service, but for, this work in particular, it's been really taxing. So, I think this is a broader issue of how to support people who want to serve. And I don't know what that means. I know there are restrictions in terms of compensation, but I think about childcare. I also think about wanting artists on the commission, and what that means in terms of funding them and conflicts of interest, and would that mean that they then can't apply for funding and they have to give that up? So it would actually reduce their income, which that feels not great to me. And I do very much want artist representation. So I have no idea about how to solve that problem or how to address it, but that's one of my concerns.
Great. Anyone else? Well, thank you so much for the feedback. Hear your concerns, hear throughout several boards and commissions that there's still a lot of work to do. So I do have several questions just to better understand what we could be doing to prepare this commission, to prepare new commission members, to make this process work, right? So I read your email regarding, you know, preparing new people. You're right, you all are very new. The institutional knowledge, you know, is something that we see throughout several boards and commissions, right? Where people are on there for several years, then they get reappointed, and it's not the case for this commission at the moment. Hopefully that won't be the case going forward, right? Hopefully we could retain more people. But I guess I've heard the need for basic training on Robert's rules.
Yeah.
I've heard, you know, how the commission works, who do you need to talk to, some quick historical background. Is there anything we are missing or that we need to be considering? What would have prepared you to be in this current role?
For me, I think just frequently asked questions. If this happens, this is who you go to, or just having a point person to go to, because like, who do we report to? I mean, I know we are an extension of the mayor because he appointed us and we were confirmed by the council, but do we go straight to the mayor? Like, does that even make sense, right? Like, who do we go to if we have a question about something in Metro government? Because again, we are volunteers, but like, who is our point person? And it could be Ms. Bucks. And if that's the correct person, then we will, you know, start utilizing her more. And then I would just like to know, you know, you all's expectations of boards. Well, how often do you expect us to communicate with you? From my understanding, we do have the authority to hire, fire an executive director, but do you want to be made aware of that before that happens? If we have an interim, did you want to be made aware of that? You know, what is your expectation of boards and commissions as well? Because I don't want it to be adversarial. I want us to, because I mean, we're all here to serve people, right? So how do we work together to do that? I want to have the type of relationship, if you hear something about arts, you'll say, hold on, let me call Leah, because that doesn't sound right. Or let me call Leah to get more information. Like, that's what I'm hoping that our relationship will be. And not that it's not, but that's the type of relationship that I would love to have with whoever is sitting in your seat.
Yeah, it's a conversation that this committee has had. and we worked on a communication to go out to all of the boards and commissions, to department heads and chairs, wanting to know what the priorities are, what it is we're missing, to have a more active communication with each board and commission, right? Historically, what this committee has been is just a pass-through. People will come, we'll ask 2 questions, 3 questions, and then they automatically get confirmed. It's not what's happening now, right? I think this council body, this new committee, has a lot of questions, has a vision for, what we want to see in certain cases. We want our new commissioners to be prepared. We know that no one comes into this knowing everything, right? But we do expect people to be interested in the boards, obviously. It's not just something to add to your resume, a placeholder, etc. As you all are having this discussion about hiring and I'll open up to the rest of the body in a moment, having these discussions about hiring an executive director, personally, there are some questions I have and concerns. The body is pretty new, right? Ideally, you would have a vision as to what you expect from the executive director you're going to be hiring, and you would be prepared by HR. You all are a unique board in that most boards, the executive director is hired by the administration. So personally, I'm looking at this as the uniformity throughout all boards and commissions, and why the Arts Commission needs to be an outlier. Or should we consider another system to try and, bring both together, right? In which the Arts Commission is able to make specific recommendations, and then the administration is in charge of hire, fire. It hasn't worked in the past, right? We've had issues with executive directors in the past, obviously. The accountability is also hard to manage. And this is nothing to the specific board at the moment. This is just how it's been throughout, right? And so personally, I would like to hear, any thoughts or something that we might be missing or not considering.
I was on the Metro Action Commission, and we had an executive director. And first I want to say, I think Leah has made a wonderful summary of how I feel. Maybe other people do too. And I want to thank Heather for all of her suggestions, because I think they are well placed. When I first came on, I looked at the language of how the Metro Arts Commission is set up and other commissions and boards. And what struck me is the similarity. It's kind of a one form does all, which is, there's no problem with that. But my prior experience was we never had this problem with our executive director. So we never faced the problem of hiring or firing somebody. And I was unaware that Metro Arts is unique in hiring its own executive director, because it does make it difficult for us as a board to be in a position of having to hire and evaluate. But if we do evaluate, which I think is important, who do we send it to? Mm-hmm. I mean, why are we doing this if it doesn't get somebody to look at it? Because if you just send it to the executive, that doesn't make any sense to me. And I don't know how they do it for the airport authority or any of the other boards and commissions, but should it go to HR? Should it go to the mayor? Or should it go to the council? What kind of evaluation should we be conducting? Because I do think when you have a staff, the executive will evaluate the individual members of the staff and use that to help them modify their behavior or give them a pat on the back or whatever. And likewise, as a commission, we should evaluate the person that is handling everything, but it should go somewhere. I don't know where it goes. I want to commend you for doing what you're doing, because I think Metro has been around long enough that to step back and look at all the boards and commissions and see how they operate. I don't think that it's detrimental to have common language in the creation of these entities, but each of them is somewhat unique. And what Leah was saying about what are the characteristics that you want for a commissioner for whatever board, I would think the airport authority should have people that know about planes. You know, that's just me, but maybe you don't. I don't know what you pick. I think it's very hard for individuals to be selected from the community who are able to fulfill all of the positions that need to be appointed. It's a big task. And I don't think we should be coming back to you as a group, because you have it. When I looked at the title of this group, it's the council rules, which I think is very important. I think you are doing what you've been doing right now. And confirmations and public elections. So once we're confirmed, you've kind of done your duty to us. We can go on and do whatever we're supposed to do. But that first thing, the council rules, I do think that's way beyond us in our little arts commission. But I want to say, I think you're doing the right thing to look at all of the commissions and the boards and look at that language that's in the Metro Charter and kind of focus on what's the charge for each of them and how they should be modified. So you've given yourself a big task and a big challenge. And I have been working on bylaws for another entity, and I want to say thank you, because I know it's thankless work, but it's necessary.
Yeah, we've started this work since last term, right? Looking at all the boards and commissions, and we reworked how many appointments the administration had, how many appointments the council had. We took some from the mayor's office because we felt like we needed more people from neighborhoods, regular people, and we had a lot of people that we could suggest, right? So we've started work on that. In that legislation as well, we put in specific language to have specific requirements for some seats, right? An example of this that's charter and not ordinance is the hospital authority. They're required to have a nurse on the board, right? And so we took a look at that for all of the boards and commissions last term. So I do appreciate that comment. I guess my question is, do you feel prepared, or how could we prepare you to take on that task of hiring an executive director?
I think so. I'll say as soon as our executive director went on leave, I will say that I was a little bit disappointed in the interaction that I did have with HR, because I did try to reach out to them to figure out what are we supposed to do, how does this work, how do we get an interim, and I just was sent somewhere else. I was sent to legal, and I have made that very clear. I've said that on the record, so I don't feel like this is new information to anybody. And even today, I'm disappointed that a letter was sent in from HR instead of someone being here to speak on that, just because in my world, when a legislator calls you to a meeting, you come and you present and you do what they ask you to do because of the nature of your position. So and that's why I asked, who do we talk to? Because I thought it was HR. And it wasn't HR for several weeks until the director came to our last meeting and was very helpful at that point. But I don't know why that was. She's very delightful, very helpful, and has been extremely helpful now, but I don't know what that wall was up at first and why that was the case. And so the last meeting, we made a suggestion of an interim person, and we handed that over to HR, and they have been wonderful with working with that person to see if they are ready to come in. And so I think that process works well. But to prepare us would just be letting us know who to talk to when we do have run into a situation like this. And the hope that they will be responsive to us when those things happen.
Great, thank you.
I would say, and hopefully my comment is specific to our particular situation in the Arts Commission and not across all of Metro committees and commissions, but there has been, from the day I stepped into the role, what feels like a sort of a palpable fear over everything. Like, I don't know if we're supposed to talk to them. I don't know if we're supposed to talk to this person. Can we call this person? And because of the nature of our situation also, there's been dispersion or mistrust cast over every entity that we have to use as a resource. So we've been told not to trust Metro Legal. Well, I'm going to choose to trust Metro Legal because I have no choice but to trust Metro Legal. And we've been told, and it doesn't really matter who we've been told by, this is just sort of floating out there, and that HR is part of the problem, and that finance is part of the problem. And so the resources that we have to reach out to have all been beat up by multiple different sources, some inside of the government and some outside of the government. And so, and again, I want to reiterate, I hope this is unique to Metro Arts and not something across Metro, but that's made it difficult to try to navigate who we should talk to and who we should trust. And I feel pretty good, and I feel like I'm equipped to build relationships and read people and decipher whether or not I can trust them. And so I've done a lot of that. But to Heather's point, I've spent probably more time, and I have the luxury of being able to do this, and I'm grateful for this. I realize it's a luxury, but I spent a lot more time with Metro Arts Commission, getting to know people, trying to get to the bottom of things than I ever expected to. And that's not me complaining. I'm happy to do it. I'm here for the interim until you fire me. But that palpable fear about who we should reach out to, even though they should be the resources that we should feel the most comfortable reaching out to, has definitely been a hindrance in getting things accomplished.
Can I say too, to build on that, I think I want to feel confident, right, in my role and my ability to make decisions as a commissioner. I put in a lot of time before to have a lot of conversations to try and map the landscape. I had followed all of this really carefully, and I still really struggled, to your point, Commissioner Jester, around kind of looking around and acting with confidence, right? And so that's what I think preparation can do, is help equip commissioners to come in and be confident in themselves, and I feel like we have a confidence in each other and trust, but thinking about that, and that's both on kind of that overall side of things everybody might need to know, and then commission specific things, right? Which I think every commission should obviously be able to onboard and kind of whatever as they choose, but it would be really helpful to have a checklist or something of these are the things that are really important for us to know. Even thinking visually about what you were saying earlier about council and the way that works, I put in a lot of time just trying to figure that out and trying to talk to people. So even an organizational chart. So if this is the rules committee, and if you have a question about this is kind of their purview, and then we have our committee as well that we interact with, and then there are things around budget and how that kind of process works. So it's all there. It's just kind of collecting it. I will say, as a commission, well, me as part of the commission, I'm like very committed to trying to rebuild some of our institutional memory that, and just electronically, right?
I read that.
And I think I want that, like for, oh, I imagine if we have new commissioners come in, that like Chair Love might send them an email and say, here's the drive and here's a few key things you might read, right, or know, in terms of thinking about where we are, or here's where to find this, right? Things like that, I think, can be powerful in helping people feel confident, because we do on the staff and with us have a complete lack of institutional memory. So the recreation of that is.
I came on at the same time as our chair did, and I was unaware that our executive was hired by us. It didn't even become a point of interest at that point. And I am sitting here reflecting on why is that? Because if the executives are hired by the executive or appointed by the executives or for all these other boards and commissions, why would they have singled out the arts? And I think it is, I'm not sure, but I think historically it may be that we disperse money. We are an entity in which Metro funds the Arts Commission with the obligation and responsibility to give money to other artists, entities. It's a different function than almost every other commission and board. They don't do that. But I don't know why the originators of the charter would have decided that this one person would have been hired by the commission rather than the way it's done for, I just want you to all
So
think about it.
there's a handful of them only, and so the Arts Commission is not by charter, if I'm not mistaken.
correct.
It's by ordinance, and so whenever this was drafted, this was just the setup of it.
And the other point I wanted to make is,
Technically, technically the code provision does not discuss an executive director.
We don't even have to have it.
It's just in our bylaws.
It's in the
Just our
bylaws.
Yeah.
I do want to say that when I came on board, it was new to me. I hadn't been paying attention about what had happened in the years prior, but mentioning that we had 3 chairs in a very short period of time, evidently that had been the history for like a year or two before we came on. And I had no clue of how troubled the organization is, and I think that's one of the reasons why we might be here this evening, is that the lack of institutional memories, because staff quit, commissioners quit, not once but twice, and then it happened while we were there. I was surprised, I think it was in our 3rd or 4th meeting, that the chair just quit. And I was like, well, why did that happen? And then 2 or 3 months later, the other chair quit. So if you go through that, it's a whiplash kind of effect. And you're trying to get responses and answers, and the line of communication was not very good. Getting information was very difficult. And I have to say, I just stand in awe of Heather, who has gone, I mean, the deep dive that she's done. Yes, the deep dive. I'm used to going onto a board and counting on my colleagues who've been there for a while to teach me and bring me along. And the thing about it is we were all new. I mean, there's 3 people who have more experience than us, and one has a sick mother and she doesn't come very much.
And one never shows up to meetings.
Yeah, and then people don't come. So, I'm sorry, am I interrupting you?
No, you're fine.
I'm just saying that it has been a challenge to figure out how this thing operates. And I think we're all willing, and some have given more time than others. We have some who got appointed with us, and they maybe come to 3 meetings, maybe. Maybe. And by the way, I'm not gonna be there next week, I'm going out of town, so.
I'm not sure there is a really good, I'm not sure there's an optimal way to vet all the volunteers that you have to fill all the boards and commissions. I do, and I've been hesitant to say this because I don't want to just repeat what was in Commissioner Lefkowitz's email. Am I pronouncing that right, Lefkowitz?
Wits.
Witz, Lefkowitz, yes.
It's fine.
But I filled out an application that took, I know how to write, so it took 30 minutes. It was from the heart, it wasn't just made up, but it didn't take long to describe why I'm passionate about the arts and to fill out my name and address and cell phone number, along with my resume, which that took longer to update than the application. And then Kathy was great to work with. But that was the totality, that and then sitting before this committee was the totality of my preparation for this experience. Fortunately, I feel like I had the life experience and the understanding to be able to handle this well and to move through this well. But if I hadn't, I would be woefully unprepared, even more than I am, given the circumstances for this. And so somehow, even though we can't maybe vet who's coming through very well, since there are so many people to vet, giving them the opportunity to understand sort of the depth and gravity of what they're getting into, just from these are the meetings you need to show up to, these are the kinds of topics you're going to handle, these are the here's a Robert's Rules of Orders abbreviated. Right now I went and downloaded it, I've got that, but still it takes meeting experience to want to actually do that as well as some people can do it, right? You can't just do that from the first day. And then we did have an onboarding meeting with Director Singh, but that was woefully inadequate too, and I think that onboarding meeting, while it was helpful, should have been completely separate from an onboarding meeting that could have been put on by Metro government about how government operates, about how committees and commissions operate, about how bills move through. And I knew all these things to some degree. I've learned even more. But a lot of people are stepping into these positions because they have a willingness and passion and an ability, but without a lot of the knowledge that comes around how to move things around in city government. So just again, I think I'm repeating a lot of what was in the email that Commissioner I'm going to mess it up now. Lefkowitz sent. But just having the ability to be more prepared by the city government about what the expectations are. And I downloaded the bylaws and I read them. And I've probably read the bylaws through 3 times now. But there's a Nicole Williams on Twitter always comments a lot about how she knows the bylaws better than we do. And it shouldn't be that way, right? But you can read them 3 or 4 times and still not know them as well as you need to know them. So to have somebody sit down and go specifically through each commission's bylaws and point out the things that are specific to your organization's bylaws and things that are important about those bylaws, I think would be helpful too.
One last thing I wanted to highlight about the application and the question, and something Commissioner McCoy made me think about this, but it wasn't asked, but I want everyone on the Arts Commission to know about what's happened on the Arts Commission over the last 7 years. You know, it's been. I want to know that people know about that and that they've read about it and that they could have a variety of kinds of opinions about it. That's fine, but people need to know that because it's important to the way that we work. So many of the challenges that we are facing internally, these are things that have been going on for years. And without institutional memory, right, it's difficult. This is not unconnected from all of that. And so I think that kind of deep understanding of the history, in particular of arts, is really important for service. And I would want to know that people understand that.
Great. Well, thank you all for the feedback. Committee members, Councilmember Cash.
Thank you. I really appreciate y'all being here, and warned by your obvious, commitment to want to do the right thing and the best thing and strengthen the commission and the arts program broadly in Nashville. And kind of what's come to my mind as I've listened to y'all talk is, there's degree to my sense is that to a degree the Arts Commission was set up to have some independence, right? And that can be a good thing, right? And kind of hopefully free of some of the other political goings-ons, and kind of gives you all a chance to make some decisions that other institutions in the Metro government aren't sticking their finger in at every turn, right? But at that same time, that might be part of the reason why there aren't clear supports and clear here's exactly who I go to for this answer. And I think that's part of the balance going forward is maintaining that independence while also finding that support. And I know we're all wanting to help you get answers to the questions. And I'm going to put it out there that sometimes it's going to be, and I think we face this sometimes it's going to be that you're not going to get 100% the answer that you're going to want, and you're going to have to make a decision. And and doing that helps support that independence. We council and in the different ways, the mayor's office, we can start stepping in and making decisions. And I think, that there's legislation that we're considering that is helping with some of those decisions and maybe providing some oversight, but also at the same time, possibly some good support that's a little more connected to council at least. I do want to point out that one of the other commissions that has recently worked, and I will say hasn't happened, I don't want to say struggled, but hasn't happened as quickly as some of us had thought, is the library board. They've had an awesome interim director for a while, but I think they're still kind of trying to figure out a way forward to hire a permanent.
They went through procurement.
I'm sorry?
They went through procurement, not HR.
Okay.
Yeah, that was.
Okay, so it's a little different. Okay. Anyway, like I said, I understand what you're struggling with, and do want to support you so that you can maintain that independence and be supported. I think that's mainly what I wanted to say, and I appreciate. I know it's been kind of like an onion that there are different layers to things that we have to discuss and work through, that you all have to discuss and work through, and I appreciate all of you that have kept the focus on the process and the issues and maybe the policies that are causing trouble, and not getting too much into the personalities of it, which is harder to get past sometimes. And I appreciate y'all being positive as you're trying to push through some things that may not be 100% positive.
Can I respond to that for just a second?
Sure.
I guess I'm having a hard time around the language feeling unsupported. I can only speak for myself. I don't feel unsupported. I feel like I didn't really understand quite procedurally what I was getting into. I'm learning that. But to know that beforehand would have been better. I have a feeling that you could probably transplant the word unsupported in our particular situation with what I was talking about earlier is the fear that was there around, are we going to be called names? Are we allowed to do the things that we know we need to do to get this right? Who are we supposed to talk to? And it's not, I think that we have a group of commissioners now that are capable of taking the independence and making good decisions and moving forward. But we do need to have confidence that the decisions we made, or that we have the authority to make the decisions that we need to make, and that we're going to have the support of legal or finance or the council if those decisions turn out to not be the favorite of other people outside of these doors. And so I don't feel unsupported. I just feel like we need to be able to have, I guess, courage necessary, backed by the full faith of the council and finance and legal, to just make the decisions that we need to make to head the right direction.
I mean, I would, just to respond to that, I appreciate that, and would think that certainly, when you make decisions, especially tough decisions, there probably is gonna be criticism.
Sure.
And, you know, just reach out to numerous people to feel out how they.
Candidly, it's felt like we need to make decisions that are gonna result in lawsuits. And people are scared of getting sued, right? And so I guess what I'm saying is we have the courage to make decisions that are probably gonna result in lawsuits, and we're still gonna have the support of the entities that we need supporting us to do our jobs well.
Like having legal representation, you all would have to go out and, you know, acquire that. Is that a concern?
Well,
No.
it was acquired for us.
Yeah, it's
Lots of them. They just showed up one day.
maybe I'm not articulating it clearly, but I don't want to I guess mix up anything. There's just been a palpable feeling of uncertainty and fear around being able to make right decisions. And decisions that I think all of us know are going to be good decisions. And I'm not sure really why that fear is there, but it's there. And I think could be misconstrued as a feeling of a lack of support. Because I feel like if we knew that we could make the decisions and whatever happened, we would be supported and it would be known that we made the right decision, that we'd have more courage around making right decisions.
Got it.
I was just gonna say, I think I hear exactly what you're saying, and just wanting to make sure that, without going into the specifics of examples, but just knowing that, like, even if there was a legal opinion that was provided to the commission about a decision that you all are considering, and you morally disagree with that legal advice and think that the right thing to do is to go against that legal advice, just making sure that there's still an atmosphere that if a lawsuit did arise out of that course of action, that you would have the full backing, the full support, and the zealous advocacy of Metro Legal and any other legal entity.
Yes.
Is that a fair way of summarizing what you're saying?
Yes. Thank you for more clearly summarizing what I was trying to say. Yes.
Yeah. No, I definitely get it.
Thank you.
Councilmember Toombs.
I wanted to go back to something you said, Mr. Jester, about you wish you had known more procedurally about what you were getting into. So the Arts Commission has had a lot more issues surrounding it than other boards and commissions. And I think from our perspective as council members, from the mayor's office perspective, in wanting to get folks to volunteer to serve on boards and commissions, like what information would you have liked to have received? Because I can imagine someone, you know, wanting to volunteer and you dump all this stuff on them, they may say, never mind, I'll do something else.
Yeah.
But we need good people to serve. So what exactly would you have, knowing what you know now, what do you wish you had known on the front end?
I think having somebody sit down and go specifically through the bylaws and point out the parts that were most important. I read them all, but you know, you don't really know what the most important parts are until the rubber hits the road, and all of a sudden you need to use that part of the bylaw, that part of the bylaws. I think that's probably would have been the most helpful part. Just an orientation around. I came to this with no expectation, so however deep it went, I was here to serve. However, you know, whatever that looked like, and so I don't feel disappointed in any way. But in terms of preparing everybody for this moving forward, or for other commissioners or committee members moving forward, having somebody sit down and go specifically to the bylaws with them and help them realize where the high points are, and then sort of just the expectations around, all right, there's going to be a monthly meeting. You're going to probably be on 1, 2, or 3 committees. These are what the commission and committee structures look like. And now I went out and found all that, and so but to have maybe a document that lays that out pretty clearly would have been a good resource to have.
And outside of those things, and I'll open this up to all of the commissioners, did you feel blindsided by anything? Oh, Commissioner McCoy is nodding.
I was totally blindsided, and I have to say that I felt almost at the first meeting that there was a lot of conflict. It was a sense of conflict, and I didn't know where it was coming from, and it headed into what you were saying about like a lot of animosity, and I for the first 2 or 3 meetings I was trying to figure out what was going on, because most of the time when you go to a new board, people are happy to see you. and that was not the perception. And I think what Commissioner Love said, that we never had an opportunity to have an interchange among the commissioners in our meetings. There was no time in the agenda where you could have a dialogue about, well, how does this work? You know, but then again, none of us knew how it worked. So we had to go to the staff as opposed to our colleagues. And I have to say, I think there is a difference of being a commissioner and asking another commissioner a question and asking a staff person a question. And that can be intimidating, even though they don't know you. You know, you're asking a question. If you get a chance to ask a question, you don't get many chances. But I think that inability to interact and it was something that happened from the minute that I came there. So I don't know how you prepare for that, but I think part of it was the history of the last 2 or 3 years, which I didn't know. And I got on, and I think it was probably 2 or 3 months before I had people say, well, didn't you read all about this in the news? Well, right now I'm not reading a lot of news because I don't like a lot of things that are going on, so I'm not subscribing to the newspaper right now, and most of what I get are the headlines of national news, and the Metro Arts weren't there, you know, I just didn't know it, so I'm sorry.
I knew a lot, and I was ready for it to be like it was. Like, I resigned from, I served on the board of a small theater company, which I much loved in my neighborhood, and I resigned. I was chair of the board, and I resigned. And that was hard, you know, I wanted to do it. I wanted to make sure I was no conflict of interest. That was important to me. But I did not feel excited, or I felt like willing to serve, and I knew it would be hard, but that was because I did know everything and had followed it. And I will say I was prepared. I'd watched meetings. I knew I'd been to meetings before. I will say that sometimes in those meetings, especially some of the first ones, it does feel, one of the commissioners described it as brutal. And I think that was true, you know, like those meetings are hard. And I don't know if there's a way to prepare for that. I think as we grow in confidence, I already feel more confident, right, in that. But I had some pretty serious struggles around it, right? I'm committed to staying, though, because I want there to be stability, and I'm committed to that institutional memory, and I feel very happy with the group that we have in terms of, so I knew. I feel like, and it was still difficult, but I was willing to do that, like I knew.
I'd put myself squarely in the middle. I went and watched a lot of the meetings. I saw some of the acrimony that had started to happen between the commission and the director, and so I knew that it was the commission or the Metro Arts was in a bad spot. I did feel a little blindsided, but I don't think there's any way anybody could have prepared anybody for this, but by the number of competing interests. Everybody has their own interest, everybody has their own agenda, and everybody's fighting pretty vehemently for that. And it seems like the least important agenda is for Metro Arts just to work. And that blindsided me a little bit. Again, I'm not sure there's any way anybody could have prepared me for that, but it surprised me.
I'll say it's when you serve on a commission, a board, or the council, you don't have the luxury of saying, "Oh, that happened before I got here," because you are the council, you are the commission, and so you did it, and you gotta fix it, right? And so I'll say that when I did come in, I came in with Commissioner McCoy, and our first meeting, we were dealing with decisions made in 2022 that we had no idea that the commission voted a certain way about something. And so, and I don't think this is anything the council can help with, but just internally moving forward and going to Commissioner Lepowitz's, and she's a great secretary, just having that institutional knowledge to say, these are hot topics that we dealt with before you got on the commission. It may come up again because we're still dealing with it. And so I think that's internal to, or specific to the Arts Commission. I don't think the council can help with that part of it because that's so in the weeds to arts. I don't think you can fix that with a pen or with anything in the code. But I think that could really help. And I think that just goes to all the new people who are with the Arts Commission, even the executive director. You know, he's been there a year and a half, 2 years. He's new, right? So I think just because a lot of the institutional knowledge is just not there, and you're just seeing everything rise to the surface.
Right. Thank you.
Do the boards and commissions, do they keep minutes, like a record of minutes?
Yes. So I don't know where there's a log of all those minutes, but
They're now in our shared
yes,
drive.
but yes, so now she's keeping a log of that. But just history of minutes like that, there was not this catalog of like all the minutes that I was able to see. And I could be wrong.
Like, it was, they're there, and then there was also a challenge, which I think is now thankfully really being resolved in terms of recording. So it was intermittent, and there were several recordings that were missing, or the recordings were bad, like in the MHRC report. Ashley had trouble with, like, because I think that now that we're on a good path with that, and that's part of the institutional memory, right? Like wanting to go back and watch the meetings, and read the minutes so that we know, and yeah.
Some of them have, for some boards, they are on their site, and so I'm going back to
Yeah.
look.
With ours, I had to pull them from I went back through every individual meeting and every committee meeting and pulled the agendas and the minutes posted on the calendar,
Yeah, I just
going
don't,
back 3 or 4 years.
I don't see it. So maybe that's something that we should look at in general.
They should be keeping minutes where they are kept
That's the real
Well, it's my
question there.
understanding that for quite some time, there was a SharePoint that was utilized by Metro Arts as an organization, and that hasn't been utilized for a while. There's one that Commissioner Lefkowitz has created now for us, but that's not necessarily even for Metro Arts staff. And so I don't think there's a common SharePoint being actively utilized by everybody in the organization at this point. And so I think part of the loss of that information and part of the loss of the institutional knowledge is because you've got to have one repository for everything. And even if it's gated to certain people and where they can go in that repository, you have to have that. And it doesn't, at least to my knowledge, it's not being utilized. There's a SharePoint there, it exists, but it's not being utilized, and I don't think it's been updated in some time. Everything lives on different Google Drives.
Yeah. More problems to look at. Any other comments from board members? No? Any final thoughts, concerns, or anything that we might have forgotten to ask that you would like to share?
I don't think so. I just appreciate, I didn't know what I was walking into, and so I appreciate the time that you all took to come. Welcome, Councilwoman Stiles. These Councilwoman and Commissioner gets with me every time, but thank you all for being here and for listening and willing to help, to assist, because this is hard. We are not the only board or commission. We are not the only ordinance that you gotta look at. And so we appreciate you even taking the time to do this for us, to help us, because we do need it and we appreciate it.
Yes.
So thank you.
Thank you all for making the time. I know it's a tough spot to be in and unique situations, but what you all have shared is helpful to make sure that, you know, we give all the boards and commissions and new commissioners and you all the best tools to make sure you're successful. And to see what we're missing, what we need to consider, how we could better prepare people, if we need to have trainings for commissioners, you know, basic, where do we keep the data, and making sure that, you know, that's accessible for people and anyone from the public who wants to go back and look at the minutes that live somewhere where we all have access to it. And yeah.
I also want to say, I know this, it's been hard, but I've learned so much. I am so grateful for the things that I've learned, the people that I've met, even like having to deal with like really difficult moments and conversations, broadening my own kind of community and the people that I've known. I am now even though it's been hard, I'm such a big fan, and I so believe in this kind of service. And so I didn't want anything in my letter to dissuade people ever from wanting to do it, because I'd do it again, you know? So I think it's a great way to be a part of service to the city.
Great. Well, thank you guys so much for being with us and for making the time. And it looks like it's stopped raining, so.
Run!
Yeah. So,
Thank you for your service.
yes, thank you.
Thank you all so
Thank you
much.
guys. Thank you so much. All right. Committee members, we have the rest of the agenda to go through. We're gonna discuss and approve edits for board and commission questionnaires. So you should also have a proposed amendment for board and commission questionnaire applications. So the first one is Amendment 1, the current language, do you wish to openly identify as LGBTQ? That's what the questionnaire says currently. At one of our work sessions, it was suggested that we change it to, do you identify as a member of the LGBTQ plus community? And then it would be yes, no, prefer not to answer. I think it was a weird, the question was posed rather strangely, so I think it makes sense unless there's other suggestions for that question specifically. All right, so that one looks good. We'll just take all of it at the end then. Amendment 2, delete the box for sexual orientation identification below to the question about LGBTQ plus identification. Director Darby, I don't quite remember that. That was just the box that broke it down into categories, is that correct?
Yes, to self-identify into different categories, and the idea was to just remove that and stick with the one question about identifying.
Yeah, and that was a suggestion made by the chair of the LGBTQ plus caucus, Councilmember Benedict. So if we're all good with that, then, okay. Next is Amendment 3, the current language, do you wish to identify the existence but not the nature of a disability? And the proposed language changes, do you identify as a person with a disability? And then available answer options are yes, no, prefer not to answer. I think that makes sense to me.
Makes perfect sense.
Any other?
I like it.
Okay. And then Amendment 4 adds a request for social media handles. Please list your social media handles and associated social media site. That could be optional in my opinion. The thought process with that was a lot of us are going onto their social medias to see what they've said about specific topics that they might come into contact with, or specific people they might come into contact with, and we've had some problems in the past, and the idea was if we ask for this, maybe they'll think, oh, I've said X, Y, and Z, I might not be the fit for this board. I'm open to any suggestions, but that was the thought.
The only question that I have with regard to that is, are the questionnaires broadly available to the public?
Yes.
Okay.
The answers,
Yeah.
questionnaires, I would have to check with, I thought you meant the form. The
Okay.
form is definitely probably available.
Yeah.
I would have to check with the clerk's office to find out how they list them. I know that once people fill them in, and then, because the questionnaire is the same as the application, so you don't have to be appointed to fill one out. You could just fill one out as saying, I'm interested in serving. So I know that they, once they're filled out and they're appointed / nominated for a position, those go to the committee and all the council members. I don't know if they are posted somewhere, so I would have to,
Yeah,
one way around to say I have to ask the clerk.
I don't think I've seen them posted, but I'm sure there could be a record to request if anything.
Absolutely, they're public records.
I mean, I'm not too concerned about it. I mean, just considering all the information that is included on these questionnaires, like putting down your phone number and your address, I think social media handles are appropriate within the realm of appropriateness. Just considering all the information that is on there and considering that it is subject to public records requests. So I've got no issue with it.
Any other thoughts on it?
I guess I want to know the purpose of it. I mean, like, it's optional, which, I mean, like, they have to put, I'm assuming they have to provide some sort of email address and some sort of address, right? And maybe a phone number for sure. This is optional, so I don't feel really strongly about it. But I guess I would want to think through a little bit, like, if the purpose of it is to go dishing through and looking for things, I'm not sure how I feel about that.
I generally do, right? We ran across some appointees who have said, you know, racist comments, some anti-trans comments, and just dealing with, you know, what these general boards are going to be dealing with. I think it's important to be aware of that, right? These boards are all nonpartisan, so it's not about, you know, what party
Right.
they identify with. It's very specific to, are some of their takes going to be harmful to the people they are supposed to be helping and interacting with on these boards and commissions. They don't have to, you know, give it to us. It'll make it easier for me to just find it, right? But I think we could have landed ourselves in some difficult situations in the past, and I guess it's just, if they're thinking about it as they're filling out the questionnaire, maybe some will decide to withdraw themselves, and we won't have to go through a public process of doing it.
Fair point.
I'll go to Tim's first.
Oh, I don't have a problem with it, particularly since it's optional. Some folks, they're on social media, but it's a private profile, so they may not want to share that. I agree with you, Chair, in terms of there have been some folks who've said some problematic things on social media that are racist, anti-immigrant, and considering that our boards and commissions are an extension of Metro, you know, you want the folks who are going to represent us in a good light. So I do think it is important to look at those things. Now, will I scroll through and look through everybody's social media? Probably not. But it's good to have that information on the front end, because there will be people who are, like the chair, who are going to scroll through their social media and bring things to our attention.
And then, not really related to this, but two somewhat related questions is, one, does this committee have subpoena power? And two, have we ever considered, like, whenever somebody comes before us for a confirmation, whether or not we have them, like, actually provide or testify before us under oath that, like, the testimony that they're giving is truthful and that they've, like, just being able to have that extra layer of vetting.
Director Darley.
I think that I'd have to go back and look at the charter, but I believe there's a provision in there that does allow, it does give some subpoena power to the council. Whether that extends to its committees, I'd have to do some digging on. And then asking people to take, to swear that the testimony that they're providing at a committee meeting is truthful. I have to look into that too. I think that when they sign or submit their application, I think that there's a certification that the information they've given is accurate, but I don't know. I'd have to do a little research.
All right. So if there are no problems with the optional, or Councilmember Cash, do you have?
We're talking about 4.
Yeah, we're still on 4.
I'm good. And you pointed out, that it may make the applicant decide, hey, maybe this is not for me. And it also, on the other end, may say, hey, I have to be really careful about how I present myself in public. And I think it's smart.
Okay. So if we have no problems with that, is there something that we're missing from the questionnaire or changes that we need to consider that aren't on here?
I do have something, and it may be that this comes later, because I think at our meeting yesterday, you talked about that the follow-up to the legislation that was withdrawn, that there would be some discussion. I guess I don't like on the form the way that it has, and I've talked about this a couple of times at the last couple of meetings, that you get to a point where you have to check yes or no, I've read the ethical guidelines. And we, not last night, but 2 weeks ago or 3 weeks ago, we found 5 or 6 that had no on that. I kind of think we should set it up, and my preface was maybe this isn't something for now, but for later, that we make it so that some acknowledgement of that is part of the application and not something that's either a yes or a no. We want them to say, yes, I've gotten and read that, rather than it be optional. Does that make sense?
And maybe it's the software, right? There are certain applications that we can't move on until it pops up and you scroll through it, read it, and then hit a button.
We were going to add, because you brought this up during several Rules Committee meetings, I was going to ask the clerk if there's a way to make that specific section a mandatory choice before you can submit your application or questionnaire. So, and I think there's a way for them to do that. I think so we just have to ask them. And I think that's a simple, just turn on that question as mandatory as opposed to optional.
And probably a lot of the folks that have checked no have actually gone, then afterwards went and read it or signed it or whatever, but I kind of think there should be no question.
And if I could just point out that regardless of whether they answer that question yes or no, once they are on or confirmed to a board or elected to a board or commission, they are required to abide by those ethical guidelines and standards of conduct.
Fair enough, but we need to make sure that they have been, informed consent, but they can't say, oh, I didn't know about that.
Well, there's no informed consent, it's the law, and so as an employee, they are designated as or defined as employee under the standards of conduct, so they are required to comply with those standards of conduct regardless of whether they've read them. So ignorance of the law is no excuse.
The bylaws thing, where Commissioner Jester was saying he wished someone had pointed it out to him, this is what you need to know. So I think it's important for folks to actually know what it says. You're right, ignorance of the law isn't a defense, Most people don't
If
know
only.
that.
Yeah,
If only.
Most people don't know that. Like, well, I didn't know.
yeah.
And so, yeah, making sure folks know, have at least looked at it on the front end, I think is best.
Yeah, I think one of the problems I have with the form itself is it's not uniform, right? The responses we get back aren't uniform. Some people attach a resume, some
Yeah.
people don't. And I think it needs to be a requirement that they actually go through the process, because the questions that they're answering on there, it doesn't give us enough information to be able to ask them adequate questions.
The resume should definitely be required. Some folks don't even answer the why do you want to serve
Yeah.
on the board. I don't know how we make folks actually give an explanation. I guess that's the point of the interview. We
Yeah,
ask
we
them.
ask it in the beginning, but at least requiring them to fill out the entire questionnaire fully, I think is important with the resume attached. Is there anything we're missing?
No, I mean, some of the questions that I wrote down are just, I think that can be a bit lengthy for the questionnaire, but just incumbent on us to be asking in the course of vetting those who are before us for appointment and election.
Yeah, I think it's a fair point that's been made, especially tonight, to have like, what are the expectations for the people coming before us, right? And what do we want them to know? And what are the general questions that we should have for individual boards and commissions? I think it's important to have some standard for these different boards that pertains to them. And then if there's anything outside of that, we are always welcome to ask. But at least, having the basics down, I think would be important. And that's probably something we're gonna have to work through for each board and commission.
Should we put the, are you able to commit to the time
I think
on the form?
I think at the
Since
very
they're
least,
certifying that,
Yeah.
these answers are true.
I think at the very least, it'll prompt them to go look at what the time commitment has been.
Because that was, and I have that issue in my work with state regulatory boards. You have some board members that just do not show up.
Yeah.
And that's a disservice to the board.
Let me ask, for each individual board, and I think the answer is no, right? There is no process for you miss X amount of, right?
I don't think that any of the code sections or charter sections that create the boards and commissions require a mandatory attendance or percentage of attendance. I know in my past with legal, if I was representing a board or commission and there was a member that was kind of lagging behind on attendance, I would usually have a conversation with the executive director, the chair, who would then kind of talk to that board or commission member about their attendance. And then that usually would fix the issue. Sometimes the member would resign because they were finding they didn't have the time, and you'd get a new board member on there. But I don't think none of those situations ever escalated to the point of coming to council asking for a board to be.
And maybe that's a direction we could make to the chairs and executive directors to keep an eye on that, yes.
Just for context, we have a member who has not responded back. It's even in our bylaws to do all of that. The chair, in our bylaws, the chair reaches out first. And I sent a letter afterwards. The person still hasn't, and hadn't been to a meeting in a year. So we're at this place of, do we literally go, and the commission has been reluctant to say, go to council, get them put off. Yeah, that's been a issue, even with people who come one meeting and you don't see them again for 3 months, then they come to another meeting and you don't see them again.
Yeah.
But can I ask a question?
Yes.
About the resume? I know in my case, when I applied for the ED job 2 years ago, I had not prepared a resume in over 20 years. So I had to go and start that from scratch. Some of the commissions and everyday people, could that, or could you foresee that possibly being a deterrent if it's mandatory?
Yeah, I've seen different formattings for the resume, right? Some have just been a paper with a name and a paragraph. And I still consider that more than what some of the others have done. Some have a standard resume template, right? Maybe we could see if there could be a template added to the questionnaire where people could just input information. But honestly, I have no problem with it being a piece of paper with a paragraph.
Perfectly formatted or
Yeah.
anything.
Yeah, as long as there's more information than what we're being given.
Because right now, it's more or less, if I remember it correctly, it's optional to attach one. Yeah, so people who have them attach them. But if it becomes a requirement, would that possibly be, and if it's not explained that, hey, we don't mean a real,
Yeah.
or,
Maybe we would have to have specific language just to clarify, but I'm fine with the doc and a paragraph, honestly. All right, anything else that we might be missing? All right,
Do we need to vote on these things?
yes.
Can I, before you take a motion to vote on these, can I just relay the additional items
Yes.
out loud so that we're all on the same page about what we're doing? So in addition to the written amendment 1, 2, 3, and 4 that you've approved, or that you've discussed today, I have an amendment 5, which is adding the sentence, are you able to commit the time to serve on the board or commission for which you're applying? And then to add to the required elements of the questionnaire in order to submit, you want to require a resume upload, require that the ethics question be answered, and to require the completion of the why you want to serve section.
Yes. And can we just make sure that the resume description of what's acceptable or just a clarification, whatever it needs to look.
Like a resume or a narrative description
Yes.
of experience. There we
Yes,
go.
that's it. Okay. Can I get a motion to approve all changes?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any not voting? All right, we are 4 in favor, 0 against, 0 not voting. And that should be the end of our committee agenda. Is there anything we're missing, anything we need to discuss right before we adjourn? All right, so meeting adjourned. Thank you everyone for making the time.